it was a very odd moment for us because people no longer seem to be working strategically for ends they could achieve. It all seemed to come from a certain extremism. And what seemed very interesting about that is there was almost a people being overtaken by a virus or something. People were no longer behaving the way you thought they should. And so there was a real connection we made in our minds between that and kind of the way horror movies attach,
Body Snatchers,
which is Invasion of the Body Snatchers, which seems a very strong metaphor for what's happening a lot in DC. The show has a very serious underpinning, but we didn't want the seriousness to be riding on top. We want it just to be fun in those kind of, Roger Corman movie kind of ways. It's something you could make fun of, but also you might think about a little bit afterwards.
Do you think audiences who were big fans of The Good Wife are going to be sort of taken aback by how kind of silly and comedic this is? I mean, even though The Good Wife was often funny, this is sort of a whole nother extreme for you guys.
I think if you guys do your job, they won't.
Yeah.
Because if folks read the press before, I think they'll recognize this is a very different show.
Mm-hmm.
I think we didn't want to be typecast. Once you have a show that is successful in any way, you get sent a lot of scripts and a lot of pitches, and it was just like, oh my God, save me from the next, woman who charges into some business and changes it all around. And The Good Wife was always meant to be a little bit funny, so this is probably more unrestrained sense of humor, but I think the key, if the audience gives it a chance, they'll see Laurel, who's played by Mary Elizabeth Winstead so beautifully, and Aaron Tveit, who plays Garrett. That relationship is very strong and very much in The Good Wife mode.
Could you talk about casting? Because they're all wonderful.
You're exactly right. I would say to talk about casting is to talk about our good luck, because we felt like we got really lucky with Good Wife, and somehow we got really lucky again. We have a really strong cast with a ton of chemistry.
Was there anybody on this cast that you wanted for The Good Wife but never could make it happen, but then you were
Tony
able to get
Shalhoub. I mean, not for the top, but for an episode, we tried to get Tony Shalhoub, and he passed on us, bastard, but then we can't hold it against him. I think the key was Mark Sachs, who's our casting director on both shows, but also we watched Mary Elizabeth Winstead in not just the kind of popular stuff she does, the Scott Pilgrims, which we love, but also an independent work she's done in a movie, Smash, which is not like the TV show Smash. It's about 12-step programs, and Alex of Venice. These are really stunning work. So we knew she could sell jokes and play the drama very well.
Yeah, they're all, and all the guys are great.
Aren't they? And you really see the chemistry with Aaron Tveit and Mary, and then also I think Danny Pino seems like her brother.
You have some very current clips and sound bites in the pilot that we saw. Are you going to be tinkering that up until the last possible minute? If something happens, are you going to swap it in?
We're tinkering today, as soon as we leave here. Because here's the thing. Sanders will still be in the episode even if he drops out after Tuesday, because we can't change it after Tuesday. But what we've been trying to do for episode to episode is change what's on the green screen right up into the last moment. Because we just wanted to, on The Good Wife, what was always fun was trying to play current as much as you could. We're trying to do the same thing here, which is we're going to change lines as much as we can in the last minute. We brought in some of the Bernie Bros stuff into these episodes, which was kind of a late developing subject matter. We're just trying to make it as much when you go home to your family, what is the conversation around the dinner table? That's what you want to make the show about. Even though obviously we're doing it from a different genre, kind of sci-fi thriller-esque.
Have there been any strange coincidences with real life in your show?
Yes.
There was an episode that we were talking about before it happened about a Supreme Court justice dying and then having somebody else put in, and we rejected it because it felt a little absurdist and too far out, and then sure enough.
Because we had the writer's room start last year, so it's been, I would say, the most interesting element of what's going on was like the Nevada Democratic caucus, or rule, whatever that thing was, that had some violence attached to it and some anger, because the show could seem, even though we tried to make it very balanced about left and right issues, what we were looking for was extremism on the left that seemed to match what was going on in these Trump rallies. Because it really is supposed to be about how extremism is endangering politics. And it's not just a phenomenon on the right, but also on the left.
Did you bring people into the writer's room who have their roots in the actual political world that could kind of mine their own experiences of the behind-the-scenes dealing?
The writers are all writers first, so they don't come from the political world, but everyone follows politics very closely.
And then we have two tech advisors, Judy Smith, who's one of the producers, and David McCullough, who's the chief of staff to Harry Reid. We were, and they get us in touch with whoever we need in contact. It's basically what we did with Good Wife. When we ever had actually it's much more absurd than Good Wife, because our writer's room will have to interrupt its call with David McCullough, who's telling us about sequestration bills and how you pass them, to get on with the entomologist who's telling us about bugs that eat brains, screwworms that are these actual bugs that burrow through skin into, anyway. So it was very, very odd writer's room that way.
So you're saying the whole brain being squeezed out here, that's based in fact? You researched that?
I'd say we researched it, but I wouldn't say it's based on fact.
We researched it. There is something called the screwworm, which is called, the Latin word is eater of man. And it is something that burrows, it's in Central America. They've eradicated it from the United States. But it basically eats flesh. And they found it in 2 or 3 patients' heads. So that part is true.
Could you talk about the involvement of Ridley Scott?
Ridley Scott's company, Scott Free, has been instrumental with all the shows we've done and the future shows we're planning. David Zucker, who is his development person, is the one we work
He's the
with closest.
president of the TV side of that company.
Ridley himself has involvement in the look, and he'll have notes. Especially on The Good Wife, he lets you get a little further ahead of him before he sends in notes about what the newest show is.
And what are some of the suggestions?
On The Good Wife, there was a suggestion that he thought some of the color printing was getting too dark. And most of his comments are positive about liking camera movement and liking the stillness of the frame, but I think he's most in tune to colors. He thought we were printing some things too green, which, is great. Hey, it's like having, Steven Spielberg or something tell you, you're doing well here, but I'd change that. We change it.
But he had no political suggestions.
No, not at all.
I asked Tony this, but he was unsure. Do the bugs as a community have an agenda, or is this just more about an infection?
They have an agenda.
Which will become clear in subsequent episodes.
Yeah.
The cast was all saying that they're getting the scripts as they're shooting, so they're not really sure kind of where the season goes. How much of an idea, or a 2-year, a 5-year, a certain plan do you have for this show?
We have a 4-year plan.
No.
It's first year is in DC, second year is in Wall Street, third year is in Silicon Valley, and fourth year is in, do you want to guess?
Youngstown, Ohio.
Yeah, Hollywood. So.
And for a show that ostensibly takes place right now in office buildings, it's very physical. You've got Mary Elizabeth jumping in a ship, and is it fun to kind of move things up?
Yes, I mean, look, Good Wife, you can feel like your brain is falling apart when you're shooting that much in a courtroom. Even if the stuff you're shooting is fun, you just want to shoot yourself after like a week of shooting in a courtroom. What was fun here and continues to be fun is this was a show where we spent a day in DC shooting. We have these wonderful sets designed by Steve Jordan, and there were always these little pieces we had to keep picking up. Now we have to go out on a ship. Now we're at this beautiful restaurant. It gave you. And one other thing that we're doing, I know this may not matter as much, most TV shows are shot with zoom lenses, which allow for time saver. They're a time saver. These are all, this whole show was done with prime lenses and will continue to be. And prime lenses, I think, create a cleaner look. But also it was more fun because everything was more physical. You had to physically move the camera in instead of doing a light zoom in or whatever. So anyway, that would be, it was more fun.
And what can you say about the involvement of the Russians, and is it going to make Putin mad?
Somehow I just don't see Putin tuning in. I could be.
We're gonna send it to them though. The Russians continue to be part of this function, of this show, but in ways that hopefully will be surprising.
Done any work on the Good Wife spinoff pilot?
Yes.
Very preliminary.
Yes.
Is there a title for that?
The Good Wife spinoff.
Okay.
Again, very preliminary.
What made you pick You Might Think by Cars as the go-to song for the invasion?
Oh, yeah.
Well, we needed something that wasn't in the current playlist that would seem surprising to hear it again. We also wanted something cheery and upbeat.
And originally it was Dire Straits' Walk of Life. Not only was it too expensive for it, but also there's a website that puts Walk of Life to the end of every movie known to man. There's it does show how every movie could be improved if you put Walk of Life to the end. And so immediately when we saw that, it was like, okay, that's out of our. It's what we wanted. You know, the sense that you're not part of the world anymore. The world has changed on you, and you don't know why. Your friend seems to have changed, and Laurel isn't sure if it's just because she's been in LA and came home. The song, the fact that music seemed to be all of something that was a little out of date and a little off, played into that.
So that's gonna be the way that people are gonna tell if someone's like
Yeah.
been infected.
There are a few ways, but yeah,
Oh, okay.
that'll be.
We have time for one or two more questions.
What was when you brought it to CBS and you said this is the next show, what was the pitch like for that?
It was complete, but I think the surprising part was that they were immediately receptive.
Yeah?
Yeah, they immediately jumped in and said, "Oh, politics and sci-fi, we're in."
Right, because we didn't go to them saying, this is the next show we want to do, damn it. It's just no, because look, we'd only do it if you wanted to. And they've been getting this summer series going, so they thought it would fit in with that, which was good because the only demand we did have, we couldn't do 22 episodes a year again. It is soul crushing, and we want to have our souls intact.
One more question?
I think I related watching to Laurel as kind of a narrator in the sense that she's doing all the what am I seeing here?
Yeah.
Was that intentional that she kind of speaks for the audience?
Absolutely. We wanted a point of view character who seemed a little bit outside of DC and could exactly share our skepticism and what's going on now.
Which is really good about Mary Elizabeth Winstead in the same way Juliana Margulies. Juliana Margulies, if you go back and look at the first year of Good Wife, basically was an observer more than an actor. She was someone who observed action. She wasn't the one who had the most lines in the script. Usually that was Will Gardner or Diane Lockhart. Here, it's a little bit of the same thing. Someone coming in at the bottom of the totem pole. Constituent casework is not glamorous work, and kind of having to observe and see how things have changed, which is always more fun filmmaking because it's not so talkative. It is a little more observant.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.